Good morning. Welcome to another video. Today I would like to talk about wedding photography and about improving your wedding photography. You may know that I'm working my way through creating a course that is about the photography and the business of wedding photography. And this is not going to be part of the course, but the course will include videos that go into a lot more depth than what I'm going to do today. What I'm going to do is look back at actually 2018, I believe it was, at a wedding I did right at the beginning of 2018, and compare it to some wedding photos that I did just a couple of months ago, just to see what the difference is in terms of composition, equipment, lighting, the way I actually got the photo, and that kind of thing. Or at least that's my intention. To be honest, when I actually did that, and I have actually done that part of the video, which we'll look at in a second, I was actually quite surprised at how good my wedding photography was back in 2018. I thought there'd be a huge difference. On some shots, yes, there is. On other shots, there's very little difference. As an example, the ceremony. There's only so much you can do with a wedding ceremony. You can use different equipment, different lens. You can maybe be a little bit more creative, but for most wedding ceremonies, it is what it is. You photograph it, you get the first kiss, you get the bride walking down the aisle, you get them walking back up the aisle. That's really all you can do. With some of the other shots, the couple shots, confetti, throwing a bouquet, prep, there's other places where some of the shots are quite different, noticeably different, and I'll explain how and why and what I did and so on and so forth. This hopefully will help you with your wedding photography and moving forward. And the reason I'm doing this is a lot of people are posting on a Facebook group, Wedding Photography for Beginners, I believe, and asking the same sort of questions over and over, and posting the same sort of photos over and over, and the critique is very often very, very similar. This might mean that you don't have to go onto Facebook and ask for a critique of your photos. You might learn something from this which helps you take better photos. That's what I'm hoping for. Unfortunately, I can't give you a do this, do that, do this, use this different equipment. There's no list of things you can do to take better photos, to give the couple better photos, to edit the photos better. It is a matter of doing it. I think the reason that the wedding from 2018 is better than I thought it was is I'd actually done about 70 or 80 weddings by that point. Maybe not 60 or 70, but a decent number of weddings, and therefore it wasn't the really, really early days. The really, really early days, I'm afraid, are up in the loft on plug-in hard drives, which I'm sorry, I'm not going up in a loft to find those. So 2018 is as far back as I can get, but you will see some difference. You will get an idea of hopefully what I'm talking about, and hopefully you will find it useful. Let's go and have a look. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom, and what I've got is a collection, Galina and Josh's wedding, 624 photos, and that is dated 24th of March 2017. I'm going to compare some of the photos here to some of the shots from my more recent wedding, which is Clem and Jordan, which was the 12th of September this year, 2023. What have we got? 2 days to go till next year, 2024. So let's go back to Galina and Josh. Galina and Josh was actually, I remember it as being a pretty good wedding. Back then, I was still sort of building my business, and most, I think, of the weddings I did were fairly low-key affairs. They would have been registry offices with a reception at anything from a pub, a village hall, to maybe somewhere quite nice, a hotel or something like that. Occasionally some church weddings, again with a reception somewhere else. Prep was often at the bride's house, along with kids, toys, and all the other kerfuffle that you get at someone's house. So this one was a bit different because everything was at the venue, Mark's Tay Hotel. And back then I didn't get too many weddings like that. These days, that's practically all I do. Either weddings where the whole day is at a kind of country house wedding venue, or maybe prep at the bride's house still, or maybe at an Airbnb or something like that, and then onto a church, and then again onto a fairly nice place for their reception. So, first thing to notice, 624 photos. If we look at Clem and Jordan, the recent wedding, 1,410 photos, and I gave the bride and groom 287. So back with Galina and Josh. Let's just increase these thumbnails and have a look at some of the shots. Let's go for 4. Sorry, that's a video of the ceremony. So I must have arrived at the hotel, quickly nipped into the ceremony room just to get a feel for what it was going to look like, what sort of shots I could get. The cake was already there, and got some shots of the cake. And then went up to see Galina doing her prep. Got some shots of the dress, which I always do. I always start with something that's not challenging, either for me or for the bride and bridesmaids or anyone else, by doing detail shots, the dress and that kind of thing. And then on to really simple, straightforward makeup shots, back to doing some detail shots. So I'll just sort of scroll through fairly quickly just to give you an idea of what sort of shots I used to do. I don't do these rings in a flower anymore. I might do rings on the bouquet, something like that, if I think it's going to work okay. Then went out and saw the guys. Josh was already ready. I think he'd got ready somewhere else and turned up at the venue with all these guys, and got these shots on the stairs, which actually aren't bad. I mean, I'd still be quite happy to take these sorts of shots today. Let's just have a look very quickly at the details for that shot. So that was on my D750 with 50mm 1.8 lens. So I didn't always use a zoom lens, but quite often I did. What was this one, just out of interest? 17 to 35. Yeah, 17 to 35 lens there. So a fairly short lens for bride's prep, which is exactly what I would do now. I would tend to use a 24 prime lens, 24, maybe a 50, one on each camera. And that would be my setup for prep. And let me just stop at this point. So here we have, let me try and find a shot where the bride and bridesmaids are already. In fact, I don't think I even, actually, I'm not even sure I managed to get a shot of that. No, onto the ceremony. So for this early wedding, the closest I got to bride and bridesmaids was bride, mum, and I don't know, grandmum and hair makeup artist or something. But notice I still did get a few shots which I would get now. This is the sort of shot that I would do more of now. So a shot through a doorway, that's the sort of shot that I definitely would get now. I believe I used flash in some of these shots. Yeah, flash did fire. And flash is something that I wouldn't use at all now, unless circumstances were really, really difficult. In a normal room like this, where we've got some interior lighting, we've got window light, I wouldn't use flash at all. So that would be different. So let's compare this one. Let's go to develop. So there's a shot, shot my 17 to 35 at 2.8. It's kind of, I'm just standing there and I get a shot of the bride with a bridesmaid, I think, doing up her dress. Now, I know that for Clem and Jordan, I have a very similar shot. And let me just compare this shot to a similar shot from, where are we? 4 years later. And if I go to, I'll run through these so you can see these up-to-date pictures shortly. In fact, there's an almost identical shot again. This one was actually a reflection in the mirror through a doorway, so even more complicated than the first than Galina and Josh's shot. But there's some shots here of the bride having her dress done up by her bridesmaids, and there we go. So is that the one I'm thinking of? Well, we've got three. So we've got a black and white version, which I love. That's really, really nice. But we've also got these shots here. We've got another black and white one there. And again, this was shot with a zoom. I occasionally used a zoom on my D780, and this was part of the problem with Nikon. I didn't have a 24-70 zoom for the Z mount lenses, so I could have put this lens on the FTZ adapter and used it on the Z8, and there were so many choices that I prefer a situation that I've got now where I've got two cameras which are pretty much identical, and I can use any lens on any camera. I haven't got to think, will this one fit on that camera? Oh, I've got to put an adapter on it, and it all just gets so complicated and takes you away from focusing on what you should be doing, which is getting great photographs. So there's that shot there, and I particularly like this one here again. And notice how I'm now not laying down, but kneeling quite low on the ground to get this sort of shot, which I never used to do. And getting in really close with this shot. This was with a 40mm prime lens. So one of the differences between then and now is, well, two differences. One is gear. I much prefer shots with prime lenses, and quite often prime lenses wide open, 1.4 you can see. It just, I don't know, it just makes for better photos. Although I didn't give this one to the bride, there was such a choice of shots. This one didn't make the cut. No flash, of course, and not shot just standing up. This one was kind of half kneeling down, I would guess. So equipment, for one thing, lens choice, and getting in the right position to get something a bit more interesting than just standing there and doing everything from normal height. So moving on. I'm not even going to talk about the detail shots. They are what they are. Now, a shot here. That, again, I had flash, I believe. Yep, flash did fire. And with the 24-70 24-120, sorry, f4. There's no way I would these days take a portrait shot using a zoom lens at 6.3. I simply wouldn't do it. So let's have a look at a similar shot from Clem and Jordan. Okay, similar shot from Clem and Jordan's wedding. Again, back to the 40mm lens, 2.2, so not quite wide open, but still pretty shallow depth of field, and completely unposed. She was just talking to her bridesmaids. And that actually that might have made a decent shot. Anyway, and then taking advantage of a shot almost wide open, 2.2 this time, of her flowers with her in the background. So just being able to take advantage of what's happening at the time, not getting everyone to pose. Have I got any of the bridesmaids? Okay, there's a shot here. This again, completely unposed, just walked around the back of the bridesmaids. She was talking to them in French, by the way, so I didn't understand a word they were saying. And again, just got a completely natural shot there. And that is much more the way that my photography's gone. again, through a doorway. And let's find another example from Galena and Josh. And actually the ceremony is probably one of the parts of the wedding where the photos I get are probably not very different to what I used to get, other than back then they would all have been with a zoom lens, 24 to 120 zoom lens. These days it would much more likely to be a 50 or an 85 or a 35 prime lens. But the actual shots themselves, there is only so much you can do with a wedding ceremony. I like that one there actually. And again, I would try and get the bride and father, or I think brother in this case, and groom in at least some of the shots. It's a shot that every bride and groom want. Let's see how this compares. Okay, a colour one, just in case I haven't got a black and white one. So this one with one from Clem and Jordan. Sorry, let me just digress. Just going back to getting shots without posing. Again, can't do it at every wedding, but sometimes people just line themselves up in a perfect position. And all I said, honestly, for this shot was, Clem, and she just looks over her shoulder, click. You won't see, that was before, so she was just talking and doing something with her flowers. I said, Clem, and she just looked over. The bridesmaids looked as well, two of them anyway, not the third one. And then next shot, okay, they did keep looking at me. Oh, that's right, she didn't want to be in the shot, so she sort of said, hold on, I'll get out the shot. So she just nipped out the shot, and that was it. I then moved around the side, and again, we're completely back to normal shots. So that's actually quite a good shot. I don't know why I didn't put that in there. I put a black and white one in there. There we go. So again, it's just a matter of capturing more of the moment now, I think, than I used to. Also the light, purposely shooting so I've got the light backlit, so we've got it's really bright but not blown out. If I go up here, marginally blown on some tiny little bits there, but basically not a blown out background, not using flash. Let me show you that shot, isn't it? There is no flash. Flash did not fire. And just using the right exposure and right ISO and that kind of stuff to get a good shot straight out, almost straight out of camera. And it just makes for better photos. Sorry, I've digressed. I was going to be talking about the ceremony, wasn't I? So, now, okay. I digress again, because on the way to the ceremony, they had to walk from where she was getting ready, and it was raining. And from a little sort of farmhouse around to the ceremony room, it was only 30-40 yard walk. But I think these sort of shots really make great wedding photos. It just says everything, doesn't it? The umbrellas up there, and this one is one of my favourite shots of the whole day. Compare that to this shot. This is the sort of shot I would probably have got back in 2018. I would have just concentrated just on the bride and on the bride and her dad walking across here. Couldn't avoid this oil tank, but of course didn't just simply crop that out. That wouldn't be a problem. But the shot that I really liked was a shot with one of the bridesmaids in. I think that works a heck of a lot better than just having the bride and her dad in there. So it's telling more of a story. And eventually, I promise I will get to the ceremony. So here we go. Very similar to what I would have done previously, as in this shot, and very similar look to that other shot we saw of Galena and Josh's wedding. But then really concentrating much more on the emotion. Now, of course, if the bride and groom don't get emotional, then you can't get that shot. But it's certainly a case of not missing it if you get the opportunity to get shots like this. And again, 40mm prime lens, wide open, 1.4. And I'll finish off by just looking at the posed shots, because when I look on Facebook on the wedding photography for beginners or whatever it's called, and people send me sometimes some photos for critique, they almost always send posed photos. So let me try and find some posed photos. Right, what I used to do, my posed photos would be something like these. This was indoors because I do remember on this day, in fact you might have noticed on the group shots, they were indoors because it was absolutely pouring with rain. It was March, so we couldn't do any outside shots. I think we got a couple late in the evening, but most of the couple shots were indoors against a very plain background. Did I use flash? I may well have used flash. No, I didn't use flash, but I certainly did sometimes. That one looks like that was flash. No, it didn't. Just not very good exposure. And even back then, I would still, although I arranged them, so I got him to stand at that angle, her to stand at that angle and look sort of kind of over her shoulder. That's as much posing as I would get them to do. I would then, I don't know if I asked them to look at the camera, but they were looking at the camera. These days there would be a lot more shots like this, where it's not about looking at the camera, just looking at each other, like this shot. I still do these shots where I have the bride in focus and the groom behind, and then swap it around, so that we've got that sort of shot there. I don't do this kind of shot anymore. But you can see they're all sort of waist up shots. If we look now at Galena and Josh, sorry, Clem and Jordan. Now, slightly different because we could go outside. It wasn't raining on... Actually, it did rain, didn't it? Because they had their umbrellas up. But later on, when it came to doing outside shots and confetti, it had stopped raining. By the way, interesting. Let me just talk about... Sorry to digress, but let me just talk about bouquet throw. Don't always get this, because I was just going through and I thought, well, there's something interesting here that you might be interested in. What speed would you shoot a bouquet throw at? You would probably shoot a lot faster than 400th of a second. I didn't. I chose 400th of a second because from experience that should, even though people are moving, it should get her in focus, and 2.8, so only she's going to be in focus. The rest are going to be slightly out of focus, but they're still going to be recognisable as people and bridesmaids and so on. But at 400th of a second, throwing the bouquet should get some motion blur, which makes the whole thing a lot more interesting. So she's pretty well... I'm not sure she's going to be tack sharp in focus because she was moving. Yeah, no, she's tack sharp. But the bouquet is very much got some motion blur, which just little details like that just make for more interesting photos, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm moving on. Group shots. No, couple shots. This was the first of the couple shots with their son. There was something special about this tree. I'm not sure why they wanted shots at this tree, but they did. And the shots nowadays that I would do of the couple are much more much more like this, much less posed. If I had to do indoor shots, I would still try and do very, very little posing. In fact, some of the best shots, if you do posing, do take shots before they actually get into position or anything like that, because those sort of shots where they're not really prepared for the photograph, those sort of shots can be much better than the actual pose shots, because we're not dealing with professional models, we're dealing with normal people. I'm sorry, we will get to some pose shots shortly. Right, so a very much pose shot done just as the sun was setting. Nice sky, horrible power lines, but I get rid of the power lines. You can do it in Lightroom using the healing brush tool, but it's really not very good, to be honest. And I use something called InPixio Photo Studio 2 or 12, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, it allows you to import a photo, and you can get rid of these lines, and it is so quick and so easy, and it is absolutely perfect. So I would just export this, put it into InPixio Pro, get rid of those lines. There was no way I could get the sort of shot I wanted with the sky, with the barn, and the background there, without the power lines in. So I knew that I could get rid of those without a problem. And basically, I just tell the couple, so let me go back. I would just say, right, stand there, guys. Here we go. Here's the first shot of the sequence. Stand there, face each other, tell each other about the day. What do you think it's so far? What's the highlights? Oh, go on, give her a kiss. Yeah, something like that. And that's as posy as I would get. We then walked off into back to that tree where they wanted some shots of the tree. I didn't actually think it was that wonderful, but there was some special significance to that particular tree, so we got some shots in the tree. And again, just stand there, face each other, talk, kiss, whatever. And then the nearest I got to posing was probably this shot, where there's this lovely track walking down into the sunset. Just ask them to, hold hands and walk down into the sunset. And another one there, and then stop and turn around and look at me, and that's it. And again, all the power lines and the telegraph pole were got rid of in Pixio. Let me just show you. So if we go back to this shot, this is the actual shot, the actual photo that the couple got. So as you can see, all the power lines gone, and I can't recommend it highly enough. It's just solves so many problems. Otherwise, you might look at this scene and think, oh, I can't take that photo. I've got these power lines and telegraph poles. I can't do it. It's going to look horrible. Well, when you've got a piece of software that's able to get rid of it very easily, then it stops you worrying about getting those sorts of shots. A few closer ups. Was that a crop from a bigger one? Possibly. Yeah. So it was actually a much bigger shot, but cropped out a square shot there just to get one or two close-ups. But as you can see, most of these are full-length shots and things like that. Okay, well, I wish I could say to you, okay, do this, do X, Y, and Z, and your photos will get better. I can't. It's not as simple as that. I even find it difficult to look at my photos and do much more analysis than what we've already spoken about. I haven't left anything out. So equipment does make a difference. Being in the right place at the right time, not posing, but not missing those opportunities where there's a great photo. Get in a different position. Think about the lighting. Use depth, something like this. Use some depth, so you've got something in the foreground, you've got your subject, you're shooting in fairly narrow depth of field, so you've got not in this case particularly, but sometimes some out of focus background. And don't miss the emotional shots. Now, you might be aware, you may not be, but I'm doing a wedding photography course, not just photography, but the whole business of running a wedding photography business. So it's the photography and the business side of things. I'll be doing a similar but much more in-depth video than this in that course, and lots of others about shooting each stage of the wedding, lighting, composition, capturing emotion, different angles, depth, shooting frames, reflections, all the other things which make for better photos. And of course, Clem and Jordan, first dance, it was this shot that recently won me a Wedisson award. And again, obviously completely unposed, but just working with the light and the smoke and all that kind of stuff, and just capturing that emotion. And another one which got highly commended was actually nothing to do with the bride and groom. I don't know if I can... It was actually the DJ just trying out his lights. It was the colour version of that one. I don't know why. Maybe I've been playing around with this, but anyway, it was in colour originally. And again, it just captures the emotion. Page boy walking across the dance floor. So, keep an eye out for news about the wedding course. It's going to be another month or so before that's ready. But in that, we'll go into a heck of a lot more detail. I hope you found this a little bit useful. And if you've got any questions, queries, or want to know more, please just drop me a message below. Thank you very much, and all the best with your weddings.